Hi, I'm Nicolette.
And I'm Sean.
And welcome to the Graveyard Shhift.
In this podcast, we talk about true crime mysteries and the paranormal.
This is where we dig up new dirt on old stories that you may or may not have heard before.
We try to gather as many facts as possible and then put our own spin on what may have happened.
We don't gather all the facts, just enough to tell the story.
So if we've missed something important, let us know.
But don't be a dick about it. And please, keep your private detectiveness to yourself.
Other than that, kick back, relax, and welcome to the Graveyard Shhift.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, so how have you been, Sean?
Hello, Nicolette. I've been very good, but crazy time of year, starting the year off super busy, which I guess is a good thing. Yeah,
it is a good thing. Yeah. I mean, you tend to be most productive in the beginning of the year, and then stuff starts to taper off. So
yeah, trying to cram it all in right now. That's what it feels like, honestly. Yeah.
I mean, you get your resolutions, right?
Yes, absolutely, and I've been trying to stay healthy. Be healthy.
I've been watching you on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, doing that.
You and your wife going to the gym all the time.
All the time,
yeah. I love it. And I've been doing a lot to
Yeah, what have you been up
not
to?
necessarily working out.
No? Well,
unfortunately,
what have you been up to?
I need to get in there and go to the gym. A lot of law stuff. Really interesting. My poor daughter has to go through some true crime stuff herself. Mm-hmm. We got a restraining order against her dad, so that's kind of a rough thing.
Yeah.
But things seem to be working out. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
hopefully,
very serious situation, but headed into a better direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no paranormal aspects to this, only true crime, and we're very sad about it, but we're getting through it. So, today I want to share with you a little story that I think would help for our precursor to our interview with David Oman.
Excellent. All right.
So today we've got the Manson murders and the Manson family.
Yes, and as you said, very appropriate, very a good lead into the Oman House that we'll be releasing at some point very soon that you'll all see. But yeah, tell us about the...
Yeah, I figured we needed this because we went to his house.
Right.
And we didn't really have the background story of what was going on. So I felt like we kind of needed that.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true because, we went in and told the amazing story that is there, but with the idea that everybody has this background knowledge about the Manson murders, but the truth is not everyone is aware of the history of that and really some of the details of the crime. So
absolutely.
Love to hear,
So we're going to start off by talking about Charles Manson himself, where he was actually born as No Name Maddox.
Really?
Yep. He was born to Kathleen Maddox. And he was born November 12th, 1934.
1934, okay.
So he was only named No Name Maddox because she didn't... I don't feel like she really cared what to name him. She was just like, whatever, he's a baby.
Right, she was young, he's a baby, and just kind of, all
16, right. I'm going to toss him to the side anyway.
Right.
So come to find out that after he was born, she was a big drinker.
Okay.
During the time that Manson was born, Kathleen... was, she's 16 years old.
Right.
She's kind of doing her thing as a 16-year-old. She obviously has sex out of wedlock. Mm-hmm. She has a baby out of wedlock. Yeah. She claims that the father of her baby is Colonel Walker. And
who's Colonel Walker?
His name is actually Colonel.
Oh, okay.
But she is misinformed and led to believe that he is a colonel of the army. Right. Because he lies to her in that way.
Okay.
We know that he might be the father because she filed a paternity case against him.
Really?
Back in the day. So, but he wouldn't pay anything, and he kind of fled. He's like, dude, I'm out. I have to go, do my army thing over here.
Right. And basically just denying the fatherhood of No Name Maddox.
Exactly. Okay. He's like, well, you didn't even give him my last name, so I have no ties to this kid.
Right.
So there's that. And when he was a little, like, not even a toddler, like still in the not a car seat, but like a buggy, a baby buggy.
Okay.
She kept taking him to bars. had him on her lap.
Really?
And would be drinking pitchers of beer. And there was a waitress who came by that was like, "Oh my gosh, you're so cute, little boy," you know. So he's sitting on his mom's lap. His mom is drinking. This waitress comes over, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'd totally buy him from you," like joking, right?
Yes.
Kathleen took that as, well,
let me get rid of this kid.
really? Okay, so I'll give him to you if you bring me a pitcher of beer.
Are you serious?
That's alleged.
Even if this is like a legend or folklore, this is an amazing story.
Right?
That's wild.
So
a pitcher of beer, and she
brought the pitcher of beer. Kathleen drank all the beer down and bolted, and baby Charlie was left on the seat.
Wow.
For this waitress as payment for the beer. How wild is that?
That is quite an origin story, as they say. Wow.
So here's the other weird thing. Even though Colonel Walker was supposedly said to be his biological father,
right,
she put another man's name on his birth certificate.
Who is this man?
His name is William Eugene Manson.
Okay.
This is where we get the last name of Manson.
Right.
So this guy is a dry cleaner. He is looking forward to taking care of Kathleen and Charlie. But Kathleen just continues to go on drinking sprees.
Yeah.
Like I said, that there was that time where she went to the restaurant and left him in the seat, left Charlie on the chair for a pitcher of beer, which is really horrible. How do you do that to somebody?
That is not a loving mother.
No,
wow.
She wasn't ready to
just not ready to be in there. Yeah.
So they got divorced. William and Kathleen got divorced right around the time where Charlie was about 5 years old.
Okay.
And she had left Charlie with a bunch of different babysitters and just went on drinking sprees, hung out with her brother Luther and his girlfriend all the time, and just didn't have a care in the world. This is the time where cocaine and drinking were just a really big thing.
Sure.
30s, 40s. And when Charles was 5, Kathleen and her brother Luther decided that they would go to bars, right? And they met up with a new guy, and his name is Martin.
Okay.
And Martin was like, "Yeah, we're gonna party, and this is gonna be great." And he just had money for days, right? And he's buying everybody drinks left and right. And Kathleen and Julia, Luther's girlfriend, thought that he had way too much money for one man, so he's got to be taken out, and all of his money needs to be taken away from him, right?
Okay.
So
what do they do? How do they do?
Kathleen, Julia, and Luther all decide to rob him, but they didn't do a very good job of it. What they did was they used a ketchup bottle in place of a gun because they didn't have one, and a knife. But the fun thing is, they didn't get away with it at all. They were really, really stupid thieves.
Yeah.
I guess what happened was Martin got away and called the cops, and Luther was caught with a ketchup bottle.
With the ketchup bottle.
Yeah.
That's like the old, when you're a kid, or the old...
Stick them up.
Oh, stick them up, yeah. In the pockets. Oh,
right?
Man. Okay. All right.
So silly. But it's kind of a good thing that they were caught.
Yeah.
Stupid criminals,
definitely.
Which kind of led to Charlie being a stupid criminal as well. But we'll get to that in just a moment.
Already at this early age, I mean, we can see that this is just a terrible environment to be born into or raised in, to begin with. Yeah, and
you're born around drug addicts and alcoholics and thieves. And let me just say that so they got caught, right?
Yeah.
And all they got off of Martin was $27. And they went to jail for 7 years.
7 years.
7 years for $27
robbery.
Isn't that insane?
Yes,
really
that is
stupid. So he went to go live with his aunt and uncle in McMechen, West Virginia. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, so you can scream at me if you want. I really don't care. And during this time, his family didn't have a lot of money.
Right. Just out of curiosity, his aunt and uncle, they were relatives of his mother, or
I believe, yes, yeah.
Just
because this is the Maddox family,
right? It is,
and he didn't have anybody from his dad's side.
From his dad's side, they were not.
He was a liar too.
Yeah.
Manipulator and a liar. See where he went?
Yes.
He came from bad seed, and
it was
just gonna keep going.
in the genes, man. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so when he was growing up and at his aunt and uncle's house in McMechen, West Virginia, they didn't have a whole lot of money. And Christmases were kind of like slim. He really wanted to have a great Christmas, and he was hoping for a lot of toys. Yeah. What he got instead was a hairbrush. And with this, his grandmother gave it to him on Christmas, and she told him that if he brushes his hair, he will fly like Superman.
How old was he around this time? He's about 5, 6. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're going to give a kid a hairbrush for Christmas, then you have to come up with some good story behind it.
I mean.
But wow.
But why?
Yeah.
Why fly like Superman?
I feel
Kids
like there's
so impressionable.
Exactly.
They will believe anything that you say. You have to be really careful. And when they find out they can't fly.
Right.
They're going to get pissed off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That story has a very quick end because
he couldn't fly.
Yeah.
And also, poor Charlie at that time was getting so made fun of by the kids at his school. And when they came back from Christmas break and all the kids had their little toys that they brought with them to school for show and tell or whatever, Charlie thought that he was being made fun of. And like all these wonderful toys were being shoved in his face. Like, haha, you didn't get this and I did.
Yeah, he was feeling bad about. No, I understand that.
It would totally make me feel bad about myself. But I mean, I don't think that the kids were really trying to say, "Oh, you're a poor boy and you don't."
No,
have
I mean, I guess there are kids that would do that, but even in a purely innocent sense of, oh, here's what I got for Christmas. Here's the toys. I'm excited. Yeah, it's still it's gonna hurt a little bit.
It does. It stings a bit, especially when you don't have what the other kids have. It's a jealousy thing. I get it. After Kathleen got out of jail, which was not 7 years, they actually dumbed it down to 3 years.
Yeah.
And Kathleen is now out of jail. She's on parole. She comes and picks up her son and sweeps him off to go live with her in hotels and motels and places like this. And even though she had been dismissive of him and tried to sell him when he was a baby for a pitcher of beer, and probably other things too. I'm sure she tried to sell him in other ways. Because
I'm honestly surprised that she even came back when she got out of jail and picked him up from the relatives, because I would have thought that she would have just been hightailing it out of his life. Yeah.
I would have too, but she picked him up.
Yeah.
I guess it was like he's my property thing, and I don't care if I have to try to sell him to other people. Yeah. I'm gonna sell him to a nunnery. No. So she moves with him to hotels and motels, right? Mm-hmm. And she did something very out of character.
What?
Because she had been, dismissive before and selling him and whatever. She hugged him. And he said that was like the most joy he's ever had in his life.
Really?
Was that one hug.
Wow.
And I didn't read anywhere else that she did it ever again. It was just that one time.
So you can see how barren his life must have been and in need of affection or any sort of physical approval touch or contact and
absolutely. I mean, you can't grow a human being without a nurturing sort of way, or physical touch is super important for people in general. So if you haven't hugged your mother, if you haven't hugged your daughter, if you haven't hugged your boyfriend, your husband, your brother, your sister, whatever, go do it now.
It really is important. It really is.
Yeah. Through that whole time that he was living with his mom, he never went to school. He was playing truant. Mm-hmm. So he was not enrolled in any schools. I believe he got picked up a couple of times by the cops and was like, "Why aren't you in school?" And he's like, "Well, I don't go to school." And so that was kind of like you're off to a really bad start. You don't get education, and you're also not getting that social aspect of like, you can't do this or that because.
That's exactly right. There's no authority established in your life or sense of responsibility or discipline or anything like that. Honestly, you know, I mean, like, not, you know, it can never excuse the later, you know, crimes that we'll get into that he commits. It's not an excuse for that, but it's hard to not see that you right now, as he's, you know, growing up and we're learning about his childhood, that's a recipe for, you know, someone who is not going to be a well-adjusted, functioning human being who's going to have a lot of problems. And it's so being that he was playing truant, he
went to jail a couple of times for not being in school, but also stealing. So he stole from the grocery store, stole just like here and there. His mom decided, I can't take this anymore. You're a problem child. I'm going to send you off. Gee, I wonder. So she sent him off to a boys' school called Gabalt. Now, this boys' school was very much like a tyrannical place. They ruled with an iron thumb, and it's a Catholic school.
Okay.
So we kind of know how Catholic schools can be back in the day.
Absolutely.
For boys specifically. I mean, there was a lot of like, you get beat, you know.
Right.
With switches or
exactly.
whatever.
And the rulers and all this.
The rulers,
and it definitely they create a sense of shame for anything that you do wrong.
Manson was having a really rough time. He's 13 years old, and he's living at Gabalt, and they're just treating him horribly, obviously, because he's doing things wrong.
Sure.
Right? It's a detention center for boys, and as well as a Catholic school. So he starts off doing a string of robberies around the neighborhood stores. He just steals whatever he can.
Oh, man.
And he gets caught when he's stolen a bike. So he goes to juvenile detention center, and he breaks out within 24 hours. And then he just goes right on robbing people.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, so he's a little resourceful at this time, but clearly, he's not doing well in the structured environment after, you know, being his early life, you know, his early life being the way that it was.
I mean, just right from the time that he was a little kid, this stuff started taking off.
Yeah, and that really is. I mean, that's so early to be out, you know, on robbing sprees and, you know, breaking out of juvenile detention centers.
You know, he doesn't know anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what life looked like to him was you want something, you take it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
Right. Seriously.
Thanks, Uncle Luther. In 1948, Manson runs away to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And he commits one of his first known crimes there.
Right.
And this is with the help of one of his classmates. They went and robbed a grocery store. And I believe in the grocery store, they found a cigar box that had $100 in it. So he just took it. And this was supposed to help him to rent a room and to get food. At first, the grocery store robbery was only supposed to be to get food. Yeah. But since he found that money in the cigar box, he's like, hey, I'm going to take it. I need a place to live. So he takes it. So now the police are called and he goes to jail for this, going into a juvenile detention center. For a while, though, Manson tried to get straight. He was trying he was trying to work like odd jobs and just find anything that he could, working at a Western Union, taking up like a newspaper route to get money so that he can actually pay rent and eat.
So maybe he got tired of the constant run-ins with,
so,
you know, at least to figure. I'll try
I'll try the straight and narrow. Let's see. Yeah. That didn't last long though. So he then also quickly supplemented his income from these odd jobs that he was picking up with doing petty theft. did not last long.
Can't keep a good thief down.
No. He was eventually caught in 1949, and the judge felt sorry for him. So, being a young boy, you look at this poor little boy and say, well, he just came from a bad neighborhood.
Right. And just for reference, about how old is he here?
I think he's about 14, 15.
Oh, man.
Still really young. Still really young. The judge who felt sorry for him sent Manson to the Boys Town in Nebraska. And he and 4 boys at Boys Town had stolen a car somehow and obtained a gun. So this is the start of his car robberies and taking them across state lines.
Yeah.
And he winds up getting caught.
And just to put this all in perspective, this whole tumultuous life, all these run-ins with the law and authorities and crimes, he's still a child.
He's still a child.
Still like and this
still
is
impressionable. If somebody would have taken him to the side and said, "Hey, you're doing this wrong."
Yeah, we gotta
you gotta straighten up.
This. Yeah, man.
Become an upstanding citizen. Well, he decided that it was his way.
Yeah.
He wanted to do things his way, and that's just what he was taught. When Manson was 16, he was tested by a psychologist, psychologically tested by a psychologist while he was in prison. And the psychologist realized that he had about an IQ of 109, which is not very high.
Not very high.
And he could barely read and write. Even though he had gone to the boys' school, I'm guessing he didn't really pay attention.
Yeah, didn't retain a lot.
No.
Right.
And the psychologist blamed a lot of this on his strained relationship with his mother.
Yeah.
Which, there's no nurturing going on there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not hard to figure out that's...
Yeah. I mean, when you see your mother and your uncle stealing things and, you kind of have been built, basically, for a life of crime.
Right.
There's not much else you do, and the learning aspect is just not there.
Right. Exactly.
He was very closed off to learning. At Boys Town, there was a bunch of other students that raped Manson.
What?
Yes. And he tried to escape about 18 times, but kept being brought back to this Boys Town school. The teachers were not those kinds of teachers that would stop the other students from doing it. In fact, they encouraged them to do that.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It's horrible. He had a very horrible life. So I can understand why he thought people were so horrible and he needed to kind of rule over them.
Yeah. It's we've he's become such an iconic character in history, having been this insane and we'll obviously get to this later, but this cult leader, murderer, crazy Charlie. We have this image of his wild eyes and his and
cutting
and just
weird,
brutal crimes and manipulation and all this. But there's not a lot of information usually discussed about his background like this and getting some perspective on the person that grew up to be this man. That's
exactly it's interesting to see how how he got to that point.
Exactly. Just it's fascinating to me, honestly.
So because being that he was trying to run away all this time, he actually made friends with 3 other boys at this school.
Right.
Thankfully, he's got some sort of support system because all the other kids and teachers
needs
are not.
Somebody to listen to.
Unfortunately, these 3 are not good kids. So this is where they decide to go and steal a car and take it over state lines, and they get caught in Utah. And now we're going to get into the first imprisonment of Charles Manson.
All right.
But we'll get to that right after this break.
We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning into the Graveyard Shhift. We'll be taking a short break, so get off the treadmill, park your car, or just grab a cup of coffee during this brief intermission.
You can visit us at thegraveyardshhift.com.
With 2 H's.
Also, you can view our videos on YouTube.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And email us at thegraveyardshhift@gmail.com.
Also with 2 H's.
And now, back to our program.
We're back on the Graveyard Shift. We were talking about the early life of Charles Manson, and you were telling us about his childhood, and now we were getting up to the point where he was about his first imprisonment after stealing cars.
Yes, so
state line.
On a psychiatrist's recommendation, he was transferred to Natural Bridge Honor Camp.
Okay.
Which is another disciplinary kind of juvenile hall type place, but it's a school because he's still young and he has to go to school.
Sure.
So he was. So this is a minimum security institution.
Okay.
Right. So they're not really watching him too much. His aunt had visited him at this time and said, "Well, he can come live with me, and I'll put him to work,
really?
and I'll watch out over him."
Yeah. How did they react to that?
They were like, "Yeah, okay." So she would let him stay at her house, and then he had a parole hearing around this time too. So his parole hearing was set for February 1952.
Right.
But in January 1952, he was caught raping a boy at knife point. Let me just let that sit for a moment.
Yeah. That's... man, that's okay. Okay, so he's we see where he's gotten his behavior escalating throughout and just reaching some pretty dark points.
At this point, I think it's more of he saw that the other kids that did that to him had control.
Absolutely, he wanted to feel some control himself, which is taking it out on another victim.
That was the way he saw to have control. Then they decided that he should be transferred to a federal reformatory in Pittsburgh, Virginia.
Okay. Wait, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh,
Virginia?
Pittsburgh, Virginia. Okay.
While he was there, he committed 8 more atrocities of the homosexual nature, and then he was transferred to a maximum security institution in Chillicothe, Ohio. He's pretty far.
I don't know. I have family in Ohio,
Do
and originally from Northern Virginia. This whole little area, it's my former part of. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly, but it sounds like he's just getting further and further gone, and. Now with violence and rape, and now we've added to the theft and the general. Yeah,
he's just going down the drain. It's horrible. He was released early for good behavior, though.
Okay, all right.
And he was living with his aunt and uncle in McMention again.
Yeah.
In January of 1955, Manson married. He was 20 years old.
Really?
And he married this hospital waitress. Named Rosalie Jean Willis. They decided to travel to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Around October, about 3 months later, Charlie and his pregnant wife, they arrive in Los Angeles, and the car that they drove in on, they had stolen from Ohio.
I was afraid that's where you were going to go with that. Yeah.
Obviously. I mean, it's kind of becoming repetitive. And
so he tried the straight and narrow life with good behavior to get out. And then he goes back. He lives with his family, gets married. But he's still, the
lesson here is he's a really good manipulator.
Yeah, very much so.
He had no intention of being a good boy.
Right. It's just.
Not at all.
It's just what can get him
from
further,
point A to point B. And just right on down the line. Again, for stealing the car, he was charged with a federal crime, and that was because he took the vehicle across state lines, and you're not allowed to do that.
Becomes a federal crime.
Yes. He was given 5 years probation, and he was also charged for an identical crime to this in Florida, but he failed to show up in Los Angeles for the hearing, which is not a good look. And he was then arrested in 1956 in Indianapolis for the same. And similar crime because, again, he took the car across state lines. Right. Federal crime. His probation was revoked, and he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment.
And he's a father at this point, right?
His wife is still pregnant.
Oh, his wife's still pregnant at this point. Okay.
They haven't had the baby yet.
Okay.
She's like 3 months pregnant.
Right,
so
got it.
This is not a great way to start your marriage.
No, really, really bad.
Yeah. So he went for 3 years to Terminal Island, San Pedro, California.
Okay.
Yeah. While he was in prison, Rosalie gave birth to their child. He was Charles Manson Jr. And during his first year at Terminal Island, he received visits from Rosalie, but not very often. Like, I think she started to get kind of tired of it.
Yeah, she would kind of have the picture that maybe this was not going to be a relationship that goes well in a life. You know, they're not going to create a great life together.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was then like, you know, Rosalie and his mother would come and visit for a while, and then all of a sudden, Rosalie started to drop off. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Why am I going to wait for somebody who keeps doing bad things? So he got the word from his mom that she wasn't going to come around no more.
Oh, man. I don't imagine he reacted too well to that.
No. I'm pretty sure he was pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
And as a side note, Charles Manson Jr. Took his own life in 1990, by the way. So...
I was gonna hold off to hear more information from you, but for everything I've ever heard about Charles Manson, the Manson family, I've never heard about Charles Manson Jr.
I hadn't either.
Yeah, this is complete news.
Apparently, right around that time was when he found out who his dad was. I think.
Wow, okay.
So he didn't want to be associated with that man, and the suicide is a really bad way to go about it, but. Yeah. I think he just got really worried and was like, I don't want this life. I don't want to know my dad.
Tough information to take in and to process.
Right, because Charlie passed away in 2017. So this is really recent, like 2 years, 3 years ago. I mean, it's crazy. Like I said, visits from his wife ceased. And then less than 2 weeks before his parole hearing, he stole another car. And was given 5 years probation, and his parole was denied.
Okay, finally, because, I mean, how can you give somebody parole who just keeps doing this over and over again? But I do have to say, he must be one hell of a car thief, because he seems...
He's so charismatic, so he might have been able to, like, charm the guards. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Man.
So his second imprisonment... received 5 years parole in September of 1958, and the same year he and Rosalie divorced. So she's like,
she's officially done with him.
Yep. Yeah. After he got a divorce and was on parole, by November he was pimping out a 16-year-old girl. And was receiving additional support from a girl with wealthy parents.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know those women who write letters to inmates?
Sure.
Especially ones that kill people? Like,
yes.
Those women are insane.
Yeah, that has always been very disturbing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, the idea that you would find someone... attractive and appealing who is in jail for a violent, heinous crime.
Right.
Yeah, or several. Violent,
Yeah. I don't... That mentality is so weird.
Yeah.
I don't... There's a term for that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like chubby chasers, but it's not, because that's something completely different. But yeah, there's like a psychological term for women that are... attracted to that kind of a person and want to marry that kind of a person.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. I mean, beyond even just feeling an attraction, wanting to
actually have a relationship
with, enjoying that. Yeah,
I can change them. No, you can't.
Right? No. And so
no way.
Now he's added pimping to his list of crimes and. Oh, man. And the manipulation continues to, yeah.
Absolutely. In September of 1959, he pled guilty to a charge of attempting to cash a forged U.S. check. It's a treasury check.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah. He claimed to have stolen it from a mailbox, which, I mean, we have laws against mail tampering.
Yeah, I mean, that's like already a federal crime. Like,
right?
I would, but I'm not forgery. No, it's not forgery. I'm not a forger, but I stole somebody else's forged materials. Yeah.
I mean, whatever. He received a 10-year suspended sentence and probation for that. And then he met up with a girl named Leona Ray, or Candy Stevens, quote unquote, because that's, I mean, that's her streetwalker name, or her sex worker name is Candy. And she also had an arrest record. So great people to be around.
Yes.
The arrest record was for, can you guess?
Prostitution.
Yay!
Yeah, there it is.
And she made a tearful plea saying that her and Manson were in love and they were going to get married, and please don't lock him up because we are just so deeply in love. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So if anybody can manipulate, it's those two.
Sure, and he gets another parole. And like, they're giving this guy every chance in the world to. I mean, he's already committed a long series of crimes, and still. Yeah. I can't
even believe it. And by the end of the year, they actually did wind up getting married.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. So. There's that. I mean, she wasn't lying.
Right. No, yeah. So I'm sure
Maybe
she was.
They were deeply in love. I don't know.
Crazy, stupid love.
But this also, they got married so that she didn't have to testify against him.
Yeah.
I mean.
That is.
Yep.
Wise use of the legal system. Yeah.
I know. Somebody's got to take initiative. And
sure. Yeah.
Manson took Leona and another woman to New Mexico for prostitution purposes.
Okay.
So he's now pimping out girls. It's not just like stealing cars anymore. He's actually really doing the prostitution ring, resulting in him being held and questioned for violating the Mann Act. Sean just looked up what the Mann Act is, and he's going to tell us what it is.
Wow. Okay. So they define it as the White Slave Traffic Act.
Oh.
A United States federal law passed in June 25th, 1910, named after Congressman James Robert Mann. And that, prohibits human trafficking, basically. That's what it, And keeping innocent girls, luring them into prostitution and then offering them chance to, be prostitute. Yeah, that's...
Now I'm mad because this is still going on.
Sure is. Absolutely. I mean, that's...
Why is this not the hammer's not brought down on people today for it? But now, Charles Manson was.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, he's.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And
I'm angry.
with that being, like such a significant law, it's the first time I've ever heard of the Mann Act.
Yeah. And the definition of it. Now, I mean, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So
that's...
though he was released and the charge was dropped for the Mann Act on Manson, he was put on probation, but he didn't think that it was over. Right. He thought that he was going to be investigated, like on the sly, like he would have people following him around, and he had a feeling that this is not over, and I might get caught for other things, so I got to be kind of good. But he wasn't. Obviously. So there was an indictment for a violation of the Mann Act followed in April of 1960.
Okay.
Then one of the women was arrested for prostitution, and Manson was arrested in June in Laredo, Texas. And he was returned to Los Angeles. He was ordered to serve a 10-year sentence for violating his probation. On the check cashing charge.
Really?
Yeah. So he was finally caught for that. Though, earlier we said that the charges were dropped, but obviously somebody cared enough.
Exactly.
like
that's coming back to haunt him. Yeah,
the IRS was like, no, sorry, dude. And then Manson spent a year trying, but unsuccessfully, to appeal the revocation of his probation.
Okay.
In July of 1961, he was transferred from Los Angeles to the penitentiary and on McNeil Island in Washington. While he was at the penitentiary, he took guitar lessons from the Barker Karpus gang leader, and his name is Alvin Creepy Karpus. Creepy as in, like, that's his nickname.
Right.
And he obtained a contact name of another inmate, of someone at Universal Studios in Hollywood.
Really?
And
who knew
that guy's name is Phil Kaufman.
Okay.
You've heard that name before.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just never thought of prison as a great place to network for entertainment industry contacts, but
apparently it is. I mean, wasn't Sean Penn in jail?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can make good connections there. Maybe. We'll get to that story at some point in the future because there's some interesting points to that one too. But it's not his story specifically. It's somebody else's story, which he happens to be in.
Right.
So at the time that Charles Manson gets the contact information of Phil Kaufman, it's speculated that Manson's mother wanted to be close to him, so she moved to near the penitentiary in Washington State.
Okay.
And she became a nearby waitress.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me. I guess she must have gone through some changes in her life as well to get to that point where before she felt very little attachment to him at all, but now she's
she
it's
wants
important
to be close to him.
For her
that's a weird thing to me because like you're shoving him off on other people.
Right. Exactly.
So much of his life. Why would he trust you?
Right.
And why do you care?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem to make sense at all unless she's come to this realization that, like, oh, look at how troubled and awful he is, and no, what have I done? Maybe, sometimes people get a little wiser in their older age, but man,
I mean, at that point, it's too little, too late.
Yeah, that's for sure. That is for sure.
He can't be nurtured into a good standing anymore. He's already, past his 20s. There's no more learning room.
Man, no, and he's just going further and further off the rails. Yeah. But so she's...
So in 1963, Leona wanted a divorce now. So during the process, she alleged that she and Manson had a baby named Charles Luther Manson. So there's two.
Okay.
She's got Charles Manson Jr., or that's from Rosalie.
Yeah, from Rosalie, yeah.
And then now we have Leona saying, that we had a baby too, and his name is Charles Luther Manson. Okay. And although the Mann Act charge had been dropped, the attempt to cash the check, the Treasury check, was still a federal offense.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
Here's a fun, weird fact. So, according to a popular legend, Manson had auditioned to be part of the Monkees. This is speculated.
I feel like somewhere I heard that, but that's now you're reminding me of it now. It just sounds so absurd, but okay. I mean, possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. And this is supposed to have happened back in late 1965. Right. I'm not sure if it's true. And it was supposed to have happened during the time that he was incarcerated still at McNeil Island. So I'm not sure.
So how is he getting that audition for the Monkees?
Yeah.
And
seems a little weird to me. I don't know if that actually happened.
Condolences on the death of Peter Tork just a couple days ago. Yeah.
Wow, that was a good leadway.
Yes.
Lead in. R.I.P. In June of 1966, Manson was sent to the terminal island for a second time in preparation for early release. But by the time of his release, on March 21st of 1967, he had spent more than half of his 32 years in prison.
Yeah.
So that's... And other institutions, not just prison. So like juvenile detention centers.
Sure.
and it was mainly because he had broken federal laws.
Right.
Because he had been in prison for most of his life, he felt like prison was his home.
Sure.
So he had, even though they were trying to release him,
Yeah.
he asked if he could stay.
And that's that mindset of being institutionalized.
He doesn't know anything
exactly.
else. Where's he going to go?
Yeah,
how's he going to
the outside world, it seems like a scary, chaotic place.
Right.
And,
in
here,
prison, you got 3 hots and a cot.
Exactly.
So why would he want to leave? Now he's got to fend for himself. Yes, there's freedom, but the freedom is scary.
Yeah, and every time he's experienced it before, he's always ended up right back in the system.
Right.
But, yeah.
All right, so we're going to get into the Manson family.
Okay, I want to hear definitely more about the Manson family.
Well, we'll get to that right after this break.
Thank you for tuning into the Graveyard Shift. We'll be taking a short break, so get off the treadmill, park your car, or just grab a cup of coffee during this brief intermission.
You can visit us at thegraveyardshhift.com.
With 2 H's.
Also, you can view our videos on YouTube.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And email us at thegraveyardshhift@gmail.com.
Also with 2 H's.
And now, back to our program.
All right, and welcome back to the Graveyard Shift, and we're continuing to learn more about the life of Charles Manson and
his imprisonments.
Yeah,
knowing that he didn't want to get out of prison is a really weird thing.
Yeah,
but I mean, I guess I get it because that's most of his life.
It is, and he's already he's lived like a life of trouble and crime by this point. Yeah. Now you said we were going to get into a little information about the Manson family. I'm definitely
So by the time of his release, he was kind of attracting people to him. He's a very charismatic guy, very manipulative, talking people into doing things. So he, at this time, had about 100 people that kind of like gathered around him and took on his kind of sort of religious Armageddon type mentality.
Yeah, 100 people.
About 100 people.
Wow.
And they're mostly like women,
obviously,
because they're going to follow after a really good-looking guy. Is he really good-looking? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in his younger years? I don't know. I mean,
he wasn't a bad-looking guy.
Right, sure, yeah.
I have some pictures that I might put up on the Instagram because we are still having a problem getting him up here, guys. Sorry. I have to apologize for that.
He must have, he has to have had a really magnetic personality.
Absolutely.
And, it's because as we were saying before, at least, from earlier studies, he was not the smartest guy in the world. Yeah, it's like,
couldn't read, couldn't write.
Yeah.
Don't know how street smart he was. He seemed like he was.
I mean, we know he could steal a car.
Yeah. He could steal groceries and money and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I guess you have to have a charismatic way about you to get away with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So he's living with his Manson family, that's what they're called, is the Manson family. They started in San Francisco and they moved to a desert area in the San Fernando Valley called Spawn Ranch. And this is an old, old Western kind of movie place,
Right, yeah, they
used to go
use
shoot
it as a set
movies.
location, a studio location, and the Spawn Ranch was from the famous scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from last year. Yeah, it's great,
and I still have not seen that movie. Hopefully, by the time this is released, I will have seen it. Hopefully, which is very funny because the last time we talked about the Joker, I had seen it before Ed Gein.
Was
released.
That was
so during the time that I was editing it, I was like, man, I don't know if I should have said that, but that's okay. So Manson moving everybody to Spawn Ranch, he's kind of getting everybody to believe the way that he believes. He's looked into his favorite book of the Bible, which is Revelations. It's very Armageddon-esque. He also takes on beliefs from Scientology and Buddhism and just kind of mishmashing a whole bunch of different religions,
right,
while also being on drugs, LSD and mushrooms.
Yes.
And everybody's like free love, and it's the 60s, and just, everybody loves everybody, except for Charles Manson and the blacks.
Yeah.
So he kind of starts this idea in his family members' heads that there's going to be a race war.
Right.
And he's
this is going to lead to Armageddon kind of thing, situation. Yeah.
Around this time, he's also like very much into music, and he's trying to start his own career in music. He meets up with it's Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys.
Right.
And Dennis has his own house up in the Hollywood Hills, in Beverly Hills, this ish area. He's friends with Dennis Wilson is friends with Terry Melcher at the time, who is Doris Day's son.
Okay.
And Terry Melcher lives on Cielo Drive. And this is the famous place where everything goes down.
Yes.
So, Terry Melcher takes Charles in for an audition. He auditions for him. And Terry's like, yeah, I just don't see how we can help you right now.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm not taking on any new talent. So
not seeing this world of potential that makes him crazy to sign Charlie.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. You're not looking for new talent, but also he's not very good.
Right.
He's not a very good singer at all. Which is kind of part of the reason why Terry was like, yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's
so
yeah.
But the Beach Boys kind of stole some of his songs.
The Beach Boys stole some of his songs.
Son of Charles Manson's songs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They did. They kind of rewrote them, and not like fully rewrote them. Took the words, took the melody, and made it their own.
Right. Just a little adaptation of sorts.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they didn't give him any credit.
Wow.
And he was pissed about that.
Okay, I'll give him that. That would be upsetting. That would piss me off. Yeah.
Absolutely. Dennis Wilson decided he didn't want to be friends with Charles Manson anymore.
Good decision.
Yeah. During the time that Charles and Dennis were friends, though, and Terry Melcher was kind of coming around, the girls in the Manson family were doing this weird thing called the creepy crawl.
Okay, I've heard of this.
They would go into people's houses, because around that time, people didn't lock their doors.
Right. It was a different era. Yeah.
They would just let themselves in and move furniture around, stack stuff up on top of each other, maybe eat some of their food and leave it out. Just be really weird.
Yeah.
And kind of disconcerting for people, because they thought that they were safe. People thought that they were safe, and they didn't realize that people were able to just come into their house and move stuff around. They would wait like till the morning, and they got a kick out of it, the Manson family, because it was like, oh, we can go in undetected and like leave, but stuff will be moved, and it'll give people this
just enough to be unsettling.
Feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's such a trust in people in an era, in neighborhoods where they felt comfortable leaving their doors unlocked, because that's such a trust. And then to realize that, somebody actually can just come in and why did they do this? And what's happening here? What does this mean? Are they going to come back?
Did they steal anything?
Did they steal? Yeah.
Well, nothing is ever stolen, but stuff is moved around, and it's just enough.
Very sadistic little mind game.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was kind of their way. Make everybody kind of like second guess themselves and put that in there. Horrible. Another little weird thing. So Charles decided to call himself Charles Willis Manson. And when you say it slowly enough, it sounds like you're saying Charles Will is man's son. Which is such like a drug-addled thought process. It's like playing certain Beatles songs backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And did you hear him say that? Yeah,
it said Satan. Did you hear that?
Yep.
It sounds like the devil's talking.
Charles Manson. Charles Manson.
So, did you hear about how Dennis Wilson died?
No.
Okay. So, Dennis Wilson had died of a drowning. Like, he lived on the beach, and he walked into the sea and he drowned himself.
Really?
Yeah. So, there's some sort of... We were talking about a curse on Cielo Drive.
Yes.
Or around, like, Benedict Canyon area. I think he kind of went nuts and did a bunch of drugs and took himself out in the ocean.
Right. Wow. Okay.
Even though...
But that is... Yeah.
So, he and Manson had gotten to a fight before this, like years before this. And Manson was like, I'm going to get you.
Right.
And then Dennis Wilson just went ahead and offed himself.
And do you remember what era that was that he...
That was like 1983.
In 1983.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was not... it was not in the 60s. It wasn't around the same time as,
But it feels like a dark, tortured end for, Yeah. For somebody.
So, yeah. So I think that he still went through a lot of turmoil, and I think he felt sorry for... maybe he had a little bit of like a survivor's remorse or guilt.
Sure, because he was entwined with this group in that era, but came out of it unscathed and had a successful career beyond that.
And he was probably like, why me? Why
exactly.
Did I get to live? So that's unfortunate. In 1969, the Manson family settled on Spahn Ranch.
Right.
And they were allowed to stay there because George Spahn really liked one of Manson's girls, who they nicknamed Squeaky because every time he would pinch her, she would squeak. And he really liked that a lot. So he was like, ooh, you're mine.
Yeah.
But he's an old man.
Yes.
It's gross. It's so gross. The Manson family quickly expanded at this time. And as it's expanding, he's still going through his race war thought process. And he's now calling it Helter Skelter.
Right.
As the Manson family is expanding, he gains some really key followers, like Tex Watson. Mm-hmm. That's a name that is semi-famous in these murders. Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten. Tex and Robert Beausoleil. Mm-hmm. He's one of the more famous ones. Now, there's an interesting thing about him, too, where I saw a thing on Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
Where they were interviewing people in this one house that was like a demon house. And supposedly Robert Beausoleil was a roommate of one of the guys that lives there currently. And they had a lot of like satanic rituals that happened in the attic.
Really?
Yeah. And this guy had claimed to have seen Robert Beausoleil become possessed by whatever it was that was in the attic. Wow. So there's your paranormal aspect, just as a precursor to other things that will happen later on. Kind of fun. So Manson's getting ready for Helter Skelter, right? And I don't know if I wrote down the notes for this, but there was a thing of they went to this drug addict's, or not a drug addict, a drug dealer's house, and he's a black man. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but Charles had ordered Tex to kill this man, and he couldn't do it.
Really?
So Charles took the knife and stabbed him himself. Wow. Thankfully, this man did not die.
Okay.
He was in the hospital, and he was able to testify against Charles Manson.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. After this, they do their, they've already done their creepy crawls,
right?
And freaked people out sufficiently. People are now like locking their doors.
Sure.
They decide to hit Terry Melcher's old place on Cielo Drive. Now, Terry Melcher is no longer living at this place.
Right.
But Charles wants somebody to pay for
his failed music career, his
exactly.
For what never became.
Right.
Because we're getting it up to the point in history that people may be a little bit more familiar with this.
Possibly.
Yes.
I've actually, I've run across people who are like, Sharon who?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right? Have you?
Very much so.
Oh,
very
it's
much
terrible.
So. Whereas, I feel like that. I feel like I heard that story, when I was a little kid, and it stayed with me through my whole life. But yeah, that's
so. We're getting up to the point where we're starting to talk about the Manson murders.
Right.
They expect Terry Melcher to still be living at the Cielo Drive house, and he is not. He's moved away since. So Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate are now living there. And I think that they had tried to do a creepy crawl at the Tate house, the Polanski Tate house, but it was unsuccessful.
Yeah. I feel like that would have been a tougher one than some because of the gates and the back.
It's right on that cliff there.
Yeah,
it's at the end of the drive.
Yeah, not
People
an easy.
Will see you.
Creepy crawl.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
During the time that Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate were there, Sharon was. They had just gotten married, and Sharon was pregnant, very heavily pregnant, and Roman had to go to London to go shoot a movie because he is, a movie director, producer. He did Rosemary's Baby. Check that out. It's a pretty good movie, as well as other movies. Sharon Tate was in Valley of the Dolls. If anybody knows or doesn't know, maybe you want to check it out. Look up Sharon Tate. She's still got an IMDb.
Absolutely.
And during the time that Roman is over in London and Sharon's by herself, so Roman Polanski had asked his friend Wojtek Frykowski and his girlfriend, Abigail Folger, who is the heiress to the Folger millions, billions, whatever, coffee
dynasty,
yes, to go and stay with her to, kind of keep her company while she's going through her pregnancy, just in case something should happen. Because she's about 8 months pregnant now, and he needs somebody to kind of help her out. She also invites her friend Jay Sebring, who was once upon a time her boyfriend.
Former boyfriend. Sure.
And but also her hairdresser.
Right.
So they had a great relationship.
Yeah, they remained close after.
Yeah. Still very, very close. And so all four of them were hanging out together, and she also had this kid staying on the property who was like a pool boy kind of maintenance man. He's just a young kid who's probably in college. His name is Steve Parent. And so he's living on the property, taking care of things for Wojtek, or for Roman and Sharon Tate, because they're famous people and they don't have the time to do this stuff.
No, not at all.
Nor do they care to. So Charles Manson sends 4 of his people to go and kill famous people, whoever it is that lives at this house now, because he doesn't know, he doesn't care, he just wants somebody to pay
and
his failed music career. And they go and they commit the murders. Now, with this, they so they had I don't know if I want to say all of how everything happened. When they were finished killing everybody in that house, one of the family members decided to write "Death to Pigs" on the refrigerator. They also took. It's not just about Sharon Tate's murder, and the people that were at that house. They also went the next day to another house in Los Feliz, where the LaBiancas were living.
Yeah.
So the LaBiancas were a very entrepreneurial family as well. They had grown kids, and they were living by themselves now. The parents were. So Mr. LaBianca was a grocery store owner, and his wife was a businesswoman. And for just whatever reason, I guess because they're entrepreneurs, and it was a random target.
Right.
Manson decided that this was going to be the next family to be killed.
Yeah.
And at that house, Helter Skelter was written on the door, but it was spelled wrong. It was like Healter Skelter, Healter, Skelter. Mm-hmm. Because again, we've got people who are uneducated.
Yeah, these are not the brightest, most educated people here that are doing this. But yeah, that and then that just was striking fear in everyone.
In everyone in LA.
Yeah.
I don't know about anywhere else, but I mean, definitely in LA because it's right in our backyard.
Sure.
The Manson family were also responsible for other assaults and crimes and thefts, and also an attempted assassination of President Gerald Ford. Did you know that?
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah.
That's... how did that go down?
I guess he's in Sacramento, and Lynette Squeaky Fromme had kind of confessed that there was to be an assassination on Gerald Ford's life by the Manson family.
Yeah.
But it didn't get that far. I mean, it's attempted.
But it was attempted, but they were planning in the planning stages.
Yeah. Scary stuff. I mean, their thinking behind this was that because these are white families, automatically people are going to think that blacks had something to do with it.
Yes, and then thus escalating the
race war.
Yeah, imagined future of race war and growing tensions. Yeah, that's
crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So the county sheriff in 1969 had taken everybody into custody, and this was actually for something else. It had nothing to do with the murders at all. It seems that they had done other things to kind of gain the attention of the sheriff. So they were taken into custody, by the sheriff, who didn't realize that they were involved with the murders. But it was through a confession of Susan Atkins that they figured that out.
Really?
Yeah, she decided to go ahead and tell them that these murders had happened, and she obviously had some sort of
regret or remorse, maybe, or no?
Yeah. Either that, or it's one of those things where she's so narcissistic that
she wants people to know what they've done.
To know.
Because I could see it going either way, and I'm not sure. I haven't.
That's what I was struggling with in my head. I'm like, how?
But there's definitely that that idea that we've done all this and nobody, everybody's talking about the crime, but nobody knows it's us.
Right.
They should,
the only person that I know to have had regret during this whole thing would have been Linda Kasabian.
Yeah. Okay.
Because from what I understand, she stayed in the car the whole time. She didn't go into Sharon Tate's house. She didn't go into the LaBianca's house. She was kind of like I don't want to say getaway driver because she wasn't driving. It was Tex that was driving.
Right, but she was along for the ride.
Yeah.
Terribly, should have done something to stop it and to warn people. But
I don't know. But
I'm sure she was. Yeah.
Right, and her baby, because she had left her husband because he was abusive, I guess.
Right.
She ran away and kind of jumped on the bandwagon of becoming a Manson girl.
Yeah.
Also, she had a baby with her, so they had the baby at the ranch, and she was afraid that they were going to do something to the baby if she didn't go along with this.
Of course, yeah. So, and it's the cult mindset in general, and then there's also this, when you're a person drifting from a situation like she had been running from, a former life, having the stability and security of, staying on this place like Spawn Ranch, surrounded by people who are your new little family, even and plus everybody's, in so many drugs being taken and, so much, weird ideas being passed around. It's understandable to an extent how a lot of these people got wrapped up in this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, at least there's a couple of people who felt bad about it.
Yeah.
And they I don't know if they turned themselves in really, but this kind of started like the whole trial of, the Manson murders.
Right.
And we're going into that right now. So the trial starts, and during like the trials, a lot came out of like Manson kind of manipulating people's minds and taking their vulnerability of like, their people's parents not paying attention to them, so they were kind of loners, and he basically said, I take in the ones that you don't want,
right,
kind of thing. And so one of the people that he was said to have taken advantage of their vulnerability was Leslie Van Houten.
Leslie Van Houten.
Yeah. And because apparently her mother was, she didn't like her mother.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you can not like your mother, but also not be a killer.
Yeah.
That's okay too. You're allowed not to like your mom. It's just one of those things that, I don't know, it shouldn't turn you into a murderer.
Definitely not. It's, I wonder how much the time period contributed to things with the idea of youth rebelling, searching for something new. And so therefore, if you were coming from a bad situation or a lost member of society, this idea of seeking some kind of movement to be a part of, even if it's something as sick as his, movement. Right. And I continue to be like somewhat surprised and impressed by the fact that somebody coming from this terrible, terrible background that he came from, and being uneducated and having a low IQ and, being in and out of jail, that somehow he managed to put in, being a failed musician, like a terrible music career. And, and somehow he managed to put himself in this position of leadership of all of these people and finding them a home, that, for, obviously we know why they were allowed to stay there, but, just this whole situation, it's like, it's crazy.
He kind of embedded himself in people's minds as like the new Messiah.
Right. And
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's
scary.
It's very, very scary that, somebody, as sick as him could have that kind of power over people.
Like, I can see him being the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Which for a long time I thought he was the Antichrist. I just want to let everybody know. Because he's pretty psycho.
Yeah.
I mean, carving a swastika in your head, that's insane.
Yeah, that just sends chills.
Yes. And he's making the Manson girls crawl on their hands and knees to the courthouse, shaved heads, with swastikas carved into their heads as well, because they were such devoted followers. Right. It's a weird, weird thing. How do you have that much control over people?
Yeah. And I guess that does, it makes me sick and frightens me, but it also fascinates me because there's something about what, this whole life that you've been telling us about. Yeah. There's something about the composite, this person that gave him this ability, this charm, or ability to manipulate. That's like.
So as we know, Manson had been in jail from 1969 to 2017.
Right.
And we're kind of going to wind this down because it's been a very long episode. And now, 3 years since his death, we are coming to some things. Actually, there have been spirits known at the location on Cielo Drive since the murders happened.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there are also spirits at the La Bianca house, and hopefully we get to know that.
Yeah, I would.
The great thing about this is that Zach Baggins bought the property in Los Feliz, the La Bianca house.
Right.
So hopefully in the future we'll get to see anything. Like maybe he'll make a museum out of it. I don't know. It's a murder house.
Right, exactly. I'm sure he bought it to do something with it.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt.
Right.
I mean, if he could buy the Cielo Drive house, he probably would.
Yes, absolutely.
But we're going to stop here for today and get into our paranormal aspect of this story specifically on another episode, because we did an interview with a man who lives on Cielo Drive, and his name is David Oman.
David Oman. I'm really, really excited to have you guys check this out. This is going to be something I think you'll really enjoy, learning a little bit more about what's been going on at the house and David Oman himself and our experiences there.
Our experiences. So this is going to be kind of like an extended 3 episodes or more, because our interview with David was about 6 hours long. So we got to cut it way back. But it's going to be really fun. There's a lot of chilling aspects to it that are just going to have you on the edge of your seat. And we're really excited for you guys to listen to that. So stay tuned for that. And you can find us on Instagram. Check out our website at thegraveyardshhift.com.
2 H's.
Our Instagram is The Graveyard Shhift.
2 H's.
Yep.
And we're on Facebook, Spotify, iTunes.
Yep. Write to our email if you have any personal stories, true crime and paranormal, or either or. Whatever you want to send in, please send it in. We love to read it.
Yeah. If there's a particular story you'd like us to follow too, or to explore, to talk about, that we'd love to hear your suggestions for that.
Are great. Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us.
I'm Nicolette.
I'm Sean.
Thanks for listening to The Graveyard Shhift, and we will see you in the graveyard.